following is a special presentation of WTCI Chattanooga, North Georgia, and the entire Tennessee Valley. A fiber optics proposal is presented. What does it mean to a county's economy and future? Plus, a closer look at campus security. These topics and more coming up on tonight's Tennessee Insider. From WTCI Studios in Chattanooga, this is Tennessee Insider.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee Insider. I'm Lewis Lee, your host and moderator. Joining our roundtable discussion this week are Harold DePriest, President and CEO of EPB, Chuck Cantrell, Assistant Vice Chancellor of University Relations at the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga, Ron Moore, former General Manager of Charter Communications for the Southeast Tennessee, Northwest Georgia area, and John Mercer, news anchor and journalist for WDEF News 12. Thank you for joining our panel today. Let's get started. It's been a week since EPB announced it would submit a $219 million proposal to establish a household entertainment and communication system. EPB wants to provide cable television, telephone, and the fastest broadband internet connection in the region. We asked some of our neighbors what they think about this new venture. Here's a little of what they had to say.
Well, I think fiber optics, period, is progress, and I think that eventually it's going to have to get there. I mean, obviously it's going to be a cost incurred, and somebody's got to swallow that cost, but I mean, it's progress. We have to have it, I think.
I feel like if it doesn't raise prices of taxes and stuff like that, that it would be okay. I think that something like that's definitely needed and would be great.
Well, Harold, ever since EPB made this announcement, there's been some public discussion as to public versus private. Do you think that EPB has an unfair advantage because it's a public utility?
No, I really don't. I think the issue comes down simply, what is it we're talking about building? If we're just talking about being in the entertainment industry, that's one issue. The real thing, though, that we're trying to do is to build an infrastructure that we think is going to be important to this community. And frankly, that's what government does. Government does provide needed basic infrastructure. If you don't think broadband is needed basic infrastructure today, wait a day or two.
All right. Well, John, how is the general public's opinion shaping up as you report that EPB is going into this new venture?
Well, I think most of the people that we've talked to seem to like the idea, and you probably heard some of the comments that we just heard a second ago. They're feeling the same way. Look at it right now. In Chattanooga, you've got two choices. You've got Comcast or you've got Dish Network right now. And that means you're not going to have a lot of competition because you've got two people. If Comcast decides to drop all their West Coast channels on their premium services like they did earlier this year, you don't really have a lot of choice except for maybe go to Dish Network. But having more competition, more chance out there. I understand, Harold, you said you're going to have a 10 to 15% savings over what you're paying now. That sounds good to, I think, everybody who I don't see a downside to is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Ron, the Times Free Press reports that 5 Tennessee municipal electric systems provide cable services right now, but the state's cable communications director says none have seen a profit. So, in fact, Memphis is mentioned in this particular Times Free Press article as taking a $28 million loss and making preparations to sell. Now, granted, the Memphis system reports sound discouraging, but the fact remains other municipalities are operational. How is this information useful to Chattanooga residents following EPB's proposal?
Well, the first thing to look at, of course, is that it can't be profitable the first year. There's a debt service you're going to have to pay, so it's a long term. What happens immediately, and this is the thing that that happens. He spoke that the people are interested in it. At first, 75% of the people will probably switch to EPB immediately, but the Comcast will not lay down. Then it's going to become a price war, and for the next 5 years, there'll be excellent values for the customers here. Who plays the game the right way? EPB has a great plan. They'll have to play. They've never been in that competitive market for the dollars like they will be in the cable industry, telephone, and the internet. So they're. What happens 5 years now? Can they hold out for 5 years? Their plan looks good, but it's a different game than what they've been in the past.
All right. Chuck, how will this affect the university, the whole fiber optic plan?
We have been sort of fortunate. We're almost pioneers in this. We have been enjoying the benefits of the high-speed optic network for a couple of years now. Our SIM Center has the connection with Oak Ridge, and we've hooked up with EPB. They've helped provide that for us. If you think about the download times, our SIM Center can download the movie Gone with the Wind in 6 seconds.
Wow.
That's the kind of internet access and high-speed abilities that this could bring to a growing economic development opportunity for Chattanooga. So we want to look at it in terms of what are the businesses going to be moving into Chattanooga, what are their needs going to be, how can we work with them to help them take full advantage of this opportunity, how can we help provide trained workers for this workforce, because it will be quite possibly a very different economic market in Chattanooga if this takes hold.
And you got to remember, we're also living in a totally different time now. It's hard to even think about it, the technology that's gone on in the last 10 or 15 years. I remember when people were talking about being able to go to your TV and watch a movie on demand. I thought, that'll never happen. Well, it's here. And to have more competition out there, as you said, the price war thing, that's going to be good for the customers.
I remember the day when we added 5 channels to the cable industry.
People went crazy,
and
didn't
we
they?
had 17 channels, and I remember saying to myself, gosh, how can we watch all those channels? Today, and you talk about things changing, in just the last 7 years, I got out about 7 years ago, and in the last 7 years ago, EPB plan wouldn't work very well because they didn't have telephony, they didn't have the internet as additional products. Now that they can spread the cost a little bit more. And some of the numbers that we talked about earlier, Mr. DeFries and I, is saying that they really have a great plan. Like I say, though, you wonder why Charter doesn't come down from Cleveland and take on Comcast, or Comcast doesn't go to Cleveland. They've known in the past that they can't split the market and make it. It may be their debt service is too high. The cable industry has got themselves in an unbelievable debt, buying new customers over the years. You know, Charter bought out Dalton a few years ago when I was there, and we paid a lot of money for those customers. So our debt services was really, really high there. So that was part of the problem. I think today is a different time for EPB, and they may have a chance here. It's not a guarantee, and I think that they're positive about it, and from what I've seen so far, it looks good.
We actually have been looking at this for, I guess, about 8 years. We thought about going into the cable business about 7 years ago. And at that time, we chose not to. And the reason was simple. At that time, we could only build a Me Too system that looked exactly like what we had here. Our whole issue was not that we want to compete with the cable company. We wanted to bring a whole new infrastructure to Chattanooga. We think the economic development side of this is much bigger than the commercial venture, although we don't have any problem thinking that we're going to get enough people taking the services to pay for the whole system.
You have some other things that it will do too. You know, you can be able to read meters from the home.
There are
So
tremendous
there's a lot of
savings
things
for the
that there's some
electric system.
savings that adds to that you can do now that you maybe couldn't have done 7 or 8 years ago.
Just a very simple thing. When we put the little box on the side of the house that provides cable TV, internet, and telephone, we could read the meter. That's a small thing. Do you know that cost us $3 million a year to read meters? $3 million is a nice little savings to start. There are other savings that will altogether total up to about $13 million a year savings for the electric customer.
All right. Well, now Chuck had said something about an economic boom. Now, another Times Free Press article had talked about how this fiber build-out will, provide an economic boom to the community. But if you look, the Chamber of Commerce says that lack of internet infrastructure has never really been a deciding factor.
Well, that's true and that's not true, and let me explain why. I was part of the team that put together Chattanooga's response when we were trying to get the Toyota plant. I can tell you the Toyota plant was so big, we told them we would build this infrastructure for them. There wasn't any question that Toyota would have the type of infrastructure they wanted. EPB would have funded it. I can't do that for every small business that comes to town. I can't do that for every middle-sized business, but the bigger companies, they pretty well write their own checks.
Well, after you put in the network, though, the small businesses can
enjoy it.
We think there are tremendous savings for the small businesses, and let me give you a couple of examples. There's a little company out in East Brainerd, actually out there near the mall, and they do hospital billing. They bill for hospitals all around the country, as far away as California. They utilize our high-speed internet so they can shuffle all that paper. If you can imagine how much paper a hospital generates in its billing. And just a few months ago, they added about another, I think, 150 employees because they had that internet connection. Had they not had it, we probably wouldn't have had those jobs. There are lots of companies who basically, if they ship pictures and things like that are really require a lot of bandwidth, they need what this offers.
And I think you have to, I mean, think about the iPod. You know, 5 years ago, no one had a clue what the iPod is or was, but now, not only is there a whole industry that builds the iPod, but there are industries upon industries that just have grown around the iPod.
I still don't understand it. So,
ask a 12-year-old kid, they'll explain it. But we have to look at this as, you know, what is the prospect? What are the potential opportunities that this could bring? And so it's not necessarily something that a business right now in Chattanooga is asking for, although Harold says there are some that are. But we have to think about what business that doesn't even exist yet that might be wanting to come to Chattanooga that would need this.
you know, the Saturn plant uses all paperless. If you deal with Saturn, if you're a vendor, you get paid over the internet, you order over the internet, and without high speed there, Saturn couldn't do business. And there are businesses that are going to come here, you know, call centers that need this high speed. And high speed is the difference. And I'll tell Mr. DeFries, once you get their email name, you've got them. Remember that.
All right, this has been fascinating, and I'm sure we're not going to hear the end of this anytime soon. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic, and that is campus security. Summer break is just a small block of time since one morning of terror for some of the victims and families at Virginia Tech. Now, college and high school campuses across the United States are filling with students, while questions of safety loom in concerned parents' minds. Just this week, Ringgold High School made the news with a 45-minute campus lockdown after a reported fight. What assurances are there that campuses are really safe, and at what length is education administrators, or are administrators, willing to go through to ensure the students learn in a peaceful environment?
And I have to say that I'm concerned, but not overly concerned. You know, I think that you know, the schools are doing the best job that they can with the resources that they have. So I'm not going to be a paranoid type person, you know, but at the same time I'm going to be cautious.
Certainly Virginia Tech was a horrible, horrible thing that occurred, but, you know, overall, I think that's an isolated instance. I think Columbine was an isolated instance. So, you know, I hope people don't, you know, go too far with it.
This one is right in your backyard.
After the Virginia Tech, we did look at our emergency procedures like every other campus in the world, I guess. We have put a few new things in place. We are looking at acquiring a system that will allow us to text message students messages immediately when something happens. You know, we had an incident just this week where a non-student was on campus and they showed a gun, displayed a gun in our cafeteria. And campus police, city police responded. That individual was arrested and booked within 12 hours. So we were happy that that didn't turn into a bigger situation. The real challenge is that, I mean, a college campus is just like a small city. And we have the same challenges and the same opportunities that you have anywhere else. And so while we do everything we possibly can to ensure the safety of our students, you have to take some just level of caution.
All right. John, are there any responses to Ringgold High School's lockdown? Any thoughts as to whether this was overreaction or was it appropriate?
Well, given what's been going on in the last few years with Columbine, with Littleton, Colorado, with you've got what happened at Virginia Tech, Ringgold, what happened at UTC, you just can't take any chances anymore these days, I think. And I think that it's better to err on the side of caution for high schools, middle schools, and junior. You got to remember, it wasn't that long ago where you would go to high school and somebody might have a rifle in their pickup because they were going to go hunting. You can't do that anymore, okay? We're living in a different world now, and yeah, people are going to be upset about, as Chuck said, the balance between are we going too far, but I think if you're going to talk about saving students' lives, because sometimes they've found that some of these kids that end up going berserk at schools are loners, have real issues, and they're going to try and go out and take out as many people as they can. They're not thinking rationally, so you have to, I think, respond as tough as you can, and that means a zero-tolerance policy.
Ron, last year, Bradley Central High School evacuated students and shut the school down early after a fire broke out in the locker. As a parent, I know your son goes to Bradley Central. How do you feel about how the system handles this, and what do you look for in the future?
Well, I think they did a very good job that day. The communications was tough. Everybody wanted to call the school and see if everybody was okay. But it handled very well. And Chuck mentioned that Bradley High School, UTC, EPB, they're all just part of a community. They're a small community in themselves. And I don't think things are any worse than what they were 50 years ago. I think we know more about it today. You know, the tower shooting in Texas, I can't remember the guy shot there. You know, Ted Bundy killed people down on the Florida campus. So we've always had these crimes. I think we're doing a lot better job today. We also do a better job of reporting it, you know, with CNN and all the other things we have in communications now, that we tend to glorify stories like, you know, Fox has to do a better story than CNN and MSN. We all have to do better stories, and we get on one thing and we can stay on when O.J. drove the white Bronco. We stayed with that for hours and followed that. You know, we didn't used to be able to do that. So we know more about the news. I think all the schools have a great plan. It doesn't mean there's not going to be something happen there. It's what they do to respond to it. You know, we learn from the West Virginia mistakes there. You know, basically just notification there. And I think Chuck said that they're trying to do something about it. So I think they're doing a great job. Is it a perfect world? Sheriff Gilley used to be in Bradley County, said, we could make this place, we can make Bradley County or Chattanooga a safer place if we hired enough cops to put on in every subdivision in front of every house. Can we afford that? No. So I think that's part of the situation.
And we also have to remember too, one thing is it's always important to make sure to encourage students to come forward when they hear these threats. That's what happened at Ringgold. One student heard about a threat off campus, went to their administrator and said, hey, here's what I heard. It's important. It's not narking. I know we got to tell the kids that this is not narking. You're saving lives. That's the difference.
I think you're exactly right. I think that's the real key, because you can't respond
That's how you're
once
going
it
to find
starts.
And we had the
You
exact
have to
same
deal
situation.
before.
Yeah.
We had
Yes.
students who witnessed what happened this week, and they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to tell the campus police. I will say this, the expectations of who is entitled to information are so different today. When an incident happens, 20 years ago when an incident happened, you could deal with it, you could control the information flow, you could work with the police, you could work with all the agencies, and you could get the information out as it sort of came to you. Now, within 5 seconds of something happening, someone is on a cell phone calling a friend or a parent or a TV station or whoever. And so suddenly, not only are you trying to deal with the situation that you've got your hands around right then, but you're already dealing with John and his colleagues from the media calling.
Or you have
You've
YouTube.
got parents
video on
calling, you've got
YouTube.
everybody calling, wanting to know what's going on. And so that becomes a real challenge. And one of the things that you have to sort of look at is we have communication needs immediately, and who needs that information quickly. In our case, it's usually the faculty, staff, and students. If something's happening on our campus, the people who are right there need it right then. But then the parents will get it next, the media will get it next, we'll get to you, but the immediate need is the folks who are right there. And
Safety first.
Safety first, and those are the people we have to deal with.
Well, okay, Harold, Mr. Technology all of a sudden, because you know you're getting into all this. MTSU is just one campus implementing what's called a text messaging blast. Chuck just mentioned that that's coming up for, is that coming up, or is it
We hope to have it in
process?
place by midterm this semester.
Okay, to notify students of safety issues. Do you think that that's something that maybe might trickle down to high schools and even middle schools eventually?
Actually, I think it'd be much more effective in a high school or a middle school. Chuck made a good point a while ago. A school the size of MTSU, Virginia Tech has as many students as the city of Cleveland. Could you text message the city of Cleveland and evacuate that city? It'll help. It'll help, but nobody should think that you're going to have a technological solution to broken people.
All right. Well, now we're going to talk about heat and energy conservation. Everybody knows that it's been so hot lately. Thinking green is the focus of many businesses and forward-thinking organic organizations. However, with the hot temperatures that we've been experiencing, thinking green is something that's all too easy to forget as business and homeowners try to stay cool. According to a Chattanooga.com article, a TVA substation caught fire last week near Clarksville, Tennessee, and after heavy power demands caused a failure. Since then, TVA has asked the 158 distributors of TVA power to reduce energy consumption in their facilities through such actions as raising thermostats, eliminating or reducing lighting, and turning off electrical equipment when not in use.
I think we have an obligation to do our part individually. I imagine, you know, if enough people do that, then it would make a big difference. You know, it is hot, and nobody likes to sit in a hot house, and I don't think anybody's asking them to do that, but maybe turning the thermostat down a little bit and cutting lights off that aren't needed and that type of thing could go a long way if enough people did it.
Maybe they should water their lawns less, and then maybe get their cars washed less, and maybe take quicker showers and baths.
Harold, this one's in your backyard. How have the high temperatures affected your workload at EPB?
Well, they haven't affected it. What they've done is put us on guard. The issue with a company like TVA, they always have enough capacity to take care of losing the biggest generator on the system. Strangely enough, this week they lost the biggest generator on the system. That means now you're on the ragged edge, and that means we do everything we can to reduce the load. This is actually one of the benefits we think we'll get from this fiber system we're talking about building. Having the ability to communicate directly with our customers and their meters, what we think is going to happen real quickly is we're going to be very much into energy conservation and energy efficiency. Some of the things we talked about back in the 80s are going to become real today, and it's going to be very, very necessary we learn how to do this and do it well.
Okay, by communicating with the customers?
By simple things. We may be able to, for instance, a home may have 2 air conditioners. We may be able just to allow one to run at a time, not both at the same time. That reduces the demand for electricity in high demand periods. Today is a high demand period. Everybody's air conditioner's on, right? Mm-hmm. So whatever we can do that reduces the use of energy on days that are exceedingly hot or exceedingly cold will have a big impact on the whole electric system.
Okay. John, there are reports that it's so hot outside, river life is dying, and Corps of Engineers has taken to not even powering up the dam. Channel 12 has spoken with the Tennessee Aquarium about the effects of the heat around here. What are they saying?
Well, you know it's been hot. I mean, everybody knows we've had more than 20 days of 95 or above. We've had several record breakers, over 100. We had 105 on Thursday, 105 degrees. Well, what is it doing to the river life? It's affecting them too. A lot of the fish are trying to go deep in the river to try and get some cooler water, because you've seen fish kills before from the heat, so it definitely has an effect on that. It depends on how much more we get. We've been in a 3-week stretch right now of heat wave. If we can ease up, and it looks like the forecast might give us a little bit of a break over the weekend, if we can ease up, that's going to help everybody, including the river life.
Mm-hmm. Chuck, most of us don't necessarily learn energy conservation at home. We learn it in the classroom. I know that lots of teachers are taking this on as a side topic. What measures are UTC administrators taking to help spread the information?
If you drive by the campus at night, you see all kinds of classroom lights on, but classes are probably gone, and so the last person out the door forgot to turn the light out. So one of the easy things we're looking at is installing motion detectors in many of our rooms, and so that just after no one was in there moving around for a while, the lights would go off. It's amazing just how something that simple, how much money that could save. But then we sort of have a more important role as well, and that's research, developing alternative fuels, developing alternative energy sources. Our SIM Center is testing a hydrogen fuel cell right now that it's about the size of a file cabinet that could provide energy for basically one home. We're looking at one that's just a little bit bigger that could maybe provide enough energy for an entire office building like downtown, and the only byproduct is water. I've actually tasted it. It's a little metallic. You might want to put it in your Brita, but I mean it's drinkable water. That's the only byproduct. I mean, we're also part of the the UT system and looking at the biofuel technologies. And so we've got a lot of things going on.
All right, Ron, when energy resources create a public outcry for conservation, what does this tell you?
Well, we need to learn all over again. I mean, we need to go back and re-educate ourselves. I know the Bradley County Schools several years ago has an energy advisor on the staff now, and he goes to all the high schools, and they've done things like take the lights out of the front of the Coke machines. They put in different type bulbs that change that, and they saved enough money each year to hire 2 teachers. And we're always worried about our taxes. Well, Bradley County's done that right, and we need to start doing that at home. I know I went and changed to the fluorescent bulbs, and tried to cut that down. I put up a clothesline out back and dry the towels out there, because you don't have to, there's plenty, it don't take long out in this 100+ degree weather to dry your towels now.
Yeah.
Saving that energy, we've got to learn to do more of that stuff, because I want to make sure we have enough to run my AC. I want to make sure there's enough left over that.
You have to have your priorities.
I sure do.
All right. Well, gentlemen, these have been very interesting topics, but they certainly weren't the only news stories of the week. So this is the part of the program where we ask you, what do you think was the big topic? What was the big story this week? Ron?
Well, I think the EPB story and the fiber is very interesting to me, of course, and it has a large effect. If Mr. DeFries is successful, they're going to do a lot of great things. If they're not successful, there's a big bill that comes along with it. So I'm very interested in watching that.
Well, you won't have to worry about that.
Well, I'm not worried about it. I live in Cleveland, but but it is, but listen to his plan. I think they've got a great plan, and it's something that I will follow, and I think the public, because it's going to have a major effect on the Chattanooga area.
All right. John?
I think it's been the heat. The last 3 weeks have been just oppressively hot. It hasn't been this hot since probably the 1980s. It's affecting plant life, it's affecting river life, it's affecting people. AC repairmen are going crazy out there trying to keep up with the demand. Can you imagine if you work for an air conditioning company right now? You'd be sweaty, but you'd be paid, I'll tell you that. They're busy right now, and that's got to be the story right now.
The weeds in my garden are dying.
They can charge you what they want.
The weeds in my garden are dying. That's how hot it is.
Yeah.
Well, there's a silver lining on every cloud. What we need is more clouds. Chuck?
I think for me, I've talked about back to school. There was an article that ran in the paper earlier this week that not only UTC, but all the colleges around here are expecting a growth in enrollment in the next couple of years. I think that when you look at Tennessee, and we are near the bottom in terms of college attainment levels, and then you see more and more people saying they intend to go to college. You see the colleges preparing to educate more people. I think that is a good sign for the Tennessee economy. It's a good sign for long-term growth in our state, and I'm glad we're seeing that benefit here in our region.
Harold?
Well, I think for me the thing that's been surprising is the amount of community input we've been receiving on talking about fiber to the home. We've seen polls on Chattanooga.com, on Channel 12, and frankly, I think this is the way democracy ought to work. People need to be telling their government leaders what they want, and I think if we did that more often, we'd probably get better government.
Yes.
I'd like to thank our panel members for their comments, and thank you, our viewing audience, for watching. We'd like to hear from you. Just log on to our website at WTCITV.org, click on the Insider Message Board, and share your thoughts on this week's discussion. Join us next week for another edition of Tennessee Insider. Until then, I'm Lewis Lee. Good day.
Tennessee Insider is a production of WTCI, which is solely responsible for its content.